everyone, and welcome to Hit and Hustle from irishsportsdaily.com. I am your host, Greg Flamong, and I have a new guest on today, Tyler Wojciak of Locked On Irish. Jamie Uyama, Mr. University, is en route to South Bend right now. He's going to be there for the start of Notre Dame fall practice. So he is going to be on site tomorrow. The first practice is, I believe, going to be open. And so he will be reporting back tomorrow. We're going to have another show based on everything that he saw. We're going to talk about the opening of fall practice, what Marcus Freeman talks about in his press conference. We're going to go all through all those things. But I did want to have a preview show for the people. We did the top 25 list 2 weeks ago, actually. I was on vacation last week, so wanted to come in off vacation, come in hot with some content for everyone, talk about the football team. My guy, Tyler, he answered the bell. He's here to talk about it. Tyler, how you doing, my man? You looking good? How you feeling right now?
I'm good. I feel great. This is my first live show, as I told you
Yes.
before we started recording. So the pressure is on, but I'm ready to go. I'm up for it.
Tyler's ready to go. He's prime. It's a fun time. It's a super exciting time. I'm fired up. I'm ready for football to start. I'm ready to have some team updates. I'm ready to get kind of over my skis on some young players, right? I want to hear some Cam Williams stories. I want to hear some Micah Gilbert stories. I want to hear about the young guys. Logan Saldate is on campus. Let's see how he looks out on the football field. So that's going to be really fun. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the team. We're going to go over some of Tyler's thoughts on kind of what his expectations are for the season, what we think we might be seeing on the offensive line. Irish Sports Daily had some intel on that. Matt Freeman reported on that. I believe it was early last week or maybe over the weekend. He had some fall, like summer nuggets going into the fall season, just based on what he's heard over the summer. So we're going to talk about that. Everyone for tuning in. If you like what you hear today, please hit the like button. Please hit subscribe. Please hit the notification bell. So whenever it is we are going live, links to the podcast are in the description below. And as always, this show is brought to you by ESQ Clothing. Tyler, did you see that that young Ian Book just got married recently?
I did, and he looked good while doing it.
He looked
Rocking
good
the
while
ESQ,
doing it.
the green.
Absolutely. Ge Wang hooked him up with an ESQ green tux. He looked fantastic. I almost said fantabulous, like on like a real thing, like organic
in a non-ironic way.
I was gonna say fantastic and fabulous. Went for fantabulous. He looked awesome. He looked real good. Ian Book, no longer a Notre Dame football player, but still sporting the ESQ threads, and you can do that as well. You've seen ESQ on all your favorite Notre Dame players and coaches with over a decade of making the best custom clothing available. ESQ will help you look and feel your best in 2024, from a perfect fitting suit or sport coat, shirt or bomber jacket, or that perfect tuxedo for wedding season. Check out Ge's amazing work at esqclothing.com. Book an appointment to upgrade your wardrobe today. Mention ISD and get 10% off your entire purchase. All right. The chat is blowing up right now. People are excited to see you on the show. If I could get the comments loaded, that would be great. It's not working right now. Why is it not working? I can't see the comments. There we go. All right. Let's see. Good afternoon from Adam Dowling. Rayjon's happy to see you. He says, welcome, Tyler. Everyone's here. TA, any updates on Ben Morrison? So Ben Morrison's coming off of his he's got the shoulder injury, he's got the shoulder problem. No updates. He's been on the media circuit. You know, it's not like he's sporting a sling or anything. Do you have a kind of a thought on that, Tyler? On Ben Morrison? Just like seems like he's going to be all right. Do you have any sort of evidence on your end that makes you think he's going to be just fine?
Nothing like concrete that tells me he's going to be just fine. And I would say that like once Marcus Freeman talks and he gives an update on his health, I wish I could say I'm going to just take that and it's 100% accurate, but he does have a tendency to be a little bit optimistic when it comes to injuries and specifically the recovery and the timeline and things like that. I think they're going to take it easy on Benjamin Morrison because he definitely needs reps in practice. Every single player does, but he's already proven himself to be a really capable player at the college level. And I think that like once we get closer to the end of campus, we get closer to the start of the season, as long as he's out there in full pads making plays, then I'm going to start to feel good. But, unless he says something very bad at the beginning, which I don't think anyone expects, I feel pretty optimistic, but I'm still in sort of a wait and see mode.
Yeah, I agree. I think they'll go easy on him. I think he'll be out there running around. Because I was thinking about it, like, I don't know what kind of shoulder injury would keep him out for as long as it would be. I mean, this would be like it's been over 4 months now, right? Like even if it was like a torn rotator, like something like reconstructive surgery on the shoulder, he'd probably be back by now. So I'm not super worried about it. But we'll find out tomorrow. Marcus Freeman's going to have a press conference after practice, so we'll find out what the deal is. I'm expecting he's going to be all right. Ge Wang is in the chat. Thank you for being here, Ge. Of course. Question for the pod: should we run a preseason promo on the Play Like a Champion sport code again? I'm going to tell you right now, I think the answer is yes. Here's my logic on that sort of thing. It's almost like buying a player jersey, because the Play Like a Champion sport coat, this is what they wear into the stadium as they walk in, the player walk. This is what they're wearing. It is like wearing a player jersey if you buy the sport coat, Play Like a Champion sport coat. I didn't know God was going to spring this on us. I'll show the sport coat. I didn't have it loaded up. I'll show the sport coat in the next show tomorrow. I'll show what it looks like. It looks flashy. I'm in for the sport coat. I think that's a yes. Chat, tell us what you think. Do you want a sport coat promo? It's like 40% off normal is what it usually is. So I'm going to go yes on that. I think that's a good idea. All right, we do have a little bit of elephant in the room business to attend to, Tyler. Mike in Oklahoma is asking. Blayberg is asking. Is the Deuce loose? Listen, is the Deuce loose? All right. So on Irish Sports Daily, Matt Freeman reported he did visit Auburn over the weekend. It was kind of like it hit. There were big rumors yesterday about it. People were, kind of hitting me up, and I hadn't heard anything. But I don't text Matt like every day, like, hey, what's going on with Deuce? Like, I don't do that. So I hadn't heard anything about it. And then Matt reported that he did visit Auburn, and like, look, it's not a good development, right? Like, it's not anything that you want from the face of your class, right? And even if a player was rated higher than him, like, the quarterback is always the face of the class, and now he has visited Auburn. My working assumption is that he'll probably visit Ole Miss at some point, right? There are going to be other visits. Is he loose? I don't know. I who knows where he's at, right? And honestly, like, unless he decommits from Notre Dame, I don't know that there's really any other way to think about it other than, look, committed, not committed, whatever the case is, he's visiting other schools. And he is either going to continue visiting other schools or he isn't. And he is either going to sign with Notre Dame ultimately or he isn't. Like, I don't know that there's anything that he can say at this point, anything that he can really even do. Once you're taking visits, man, like, the cat's out of the bag on that. The recruitment has changed, and that's where it's at for me. Well, I'm curious to get your thoughts on kind of how you process all this information.
I like the way that Matt phrased it on the Irish Sports Daily boards when he said it's the price you pay when you have one of the best quarterbacks committed, because it's true. Like, we want to live in a world where Notre Dame gets these guys to commit early and every other school in the country wants them, but they're able to just shut down their entire recruitment. That's just not how things work. And that's why things are notoriously complicated when you're recruiting in SEC country. I mean, you hear about all these stories every year, like, I remember the Peyton Bowen saga, right? Like, we still talk about that years later. And talking to some people who are pretty tuned into SEC recruiting, they're like, man, we have one of those or maybe even two every single cycle. So it might be foreign to us as Notre Dame fans because, frankly, Notre Dame hasn't really been recruiting some of those high-end guys from the South like they have been in years past. Now they have Deuce Knight, who not only is one of the best players in the country, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. And, a lot of other schools want him. So I'm not shocked by this development. He's a really, coveted prospect. He's really talented. He's from Mississippi. And there's going to be some schools who put, all their chips on the table when it comes to Deuce. And I also have to look at the fact that Notre Dame is completely whiffed on their wide receivers in the class of 2025. I don't think it's a coincidence that all of this is happening right after Notre Dame missed on Meadows and missed on Dylan Robinson. So on one hand, it's clearly not good for Notre Dame and their side of things. I'm not ready to say that he's going to decommit anytime soon. I just kind of understand where he's coming from. He's got to make a decision for his future. He's got to evaluate all of his options. He has plenty of them, and now he's just looking into them, a little bit further.
Yeah, like this is beyond like he's doing something wrong. He's clearly not. This is normal in the world of college football recruiting. This is normal. This is a normal thing that happens. Like we are clued into the way Notre Dame usually handles business and how things go for Notre Dame. But like this is a normal thing. Like I saw just over the weekend, like a player committed to Auburn after or committed to Auburn, decommitted from Alabama after committing to Alabama from Auburn previously. Like he basically just flip-flopped back and forth. And like this is a thing that happens. Like this is a normal thing. It's like you said, like in SEC recruiting, like things are very volatile, very, very volatile, right? And so it just is what it is. And I think, but that doesn't, it's saying it is what it is and that's normal isn't like, like Notre Dame fans should feel better. You shouldn't, right? Especially after the July they just had, right? They didn't get any of their wideouts. You lost Ivan Taylor, and now Deuce is visiting other schools. It's a terrible July. Like honestly, it's going into July, it was a complete 180 in terms of the vibes recruiting wise. It's been a bad month. Hopefully they can turn it around for their sake. Right now, it's just not going very well. But look, Notre Dame is not going to, obviously, they're not going to give up here. He hasn't decommitted from them publicly, at least, which isn't to say I don't mean that to say like, oh, I have information that he didn't do it, or like I don't have information that he decommitted like on the hush. Like I don't have that. I'm just saying like, as far as we know, he's still committed to Notre Dame. He's still communicating with Notre Dame. That's something that Matt emphasized. Like they are always in communication, right? Which is a good thing. So we'll just have to see. Like honestly, there's no sugarcoating it. It's not a good development. It's not good for the class. But we're just gonna have to see and see where it goes.
It's always Auburn too. Do you remember Reuben Foster, the linebacker, who had an Auburn tattoo because he committed to them in high school and then ended up playing for Alabama? So these things happen. Usually Auburn's involved when it gets really weird, but also got me thinking of just this most recent signing day when Ohio State, who had one of the best classes in the country, they had Jeremiah Smith, wide receiver, number one rated prospect in the entire country. They had him pretty, like it felt like they had him in the bag, and all signs are pointing to him committing to Ohio State and signing with them on signing day. And then Ryan Day was at his press conference and basically got word during it that Jeremiah Smith had signed, and he let out this huge sigh of relief because he had been in a battle to get his services all the way up until the last possible second. I don't think it's going to be like that with Deuce, but this is just the way it is when you're recruiting at the top.
And I think like Notre Dame has agency here. They can go out there and light it up on offense in the first month or so. And then this conversation, in my opinion, just completely flips, and not just that, but I think for fans too, even if it doesn't help entice Deuce for whatever reason, maybe he just wants to play in the South or whatever. Like if Notre Dame's offense is lighting it up, then, Rajon brings up a good point. Like you got CJ Carr sitting there, right? Like Notre Dame has from just in a vacuum quarterback situation, Notre Dame's got a good situation going on at quarterback right now. Okay. So on that front, it should be all right. It's not great for the 2025 class, especially not the offensive class that is just struggle busting right now. But for the team at large, it's not the biggest problem. Michael Parks brings up also got Noah Grubbs committed to the 2026 class. So there's a lot of things going on that are right for Notre Dame on the quarterback and the quarterback position. Speaking of the offense coming out and blowing up, Tyler, let's get into talking about the 2024 team, your expectations. I'm curious about just a bird's eye view, your overall, how you feel about the team, your own personal vibe going into fall camp, the camp starting, just what type of team this is going to be for Notre Dame.
I'm so excited. It makes me nervous. And I think people who know me aren't going to be super shocked by that. I feel like I'm sort of a natural pessimist, but I am so excited about this team. They have a loaded roster, a really talented, experienced coaching staff. Now Marcus Freeman entering his third and very important season as the head coach. And they have a very favorable schedule. I think it all plays together. And that's a big reason why I feel so good about this team. Don't get me wrong. There's certainly concerns with this roster that I'm sure we're going to talk about at length on today's show, but it's a fun time, and it's kind of funny too because, like, you're right, July was such a bad month in the recruiting trail. It's like, okay, yes, this is bad, but the season is about to start. And at the end of every football season, when you kind of look at the road ahead and you're like, man, we have 8 months until there's actual football again. It's a really sad time. So now that we're so close, like, I understand that there's concerns about recruiting and Deuce, but like, I don't really care in the grand scheme because I'm just so excited and optimistic about this year's season.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are excited. Like, they are, they have a lot of good pieces, right? Like, we're something we're going to go over today is, what are you most confident in? Like, what position group are you most confident in? And when I was thinking about this for our site, like, I was wondering, like, man, there's actually like a lot of good choices to go through, just in terms of like who I think, man, who is the best, position group, or who am I most confident that is going to be good, and I'm just like, I settled on running backs, but I don't know if I'm speaking about just the offense. Like, I could go in a number of different directions. So, like, if I asked you that, like, what position do you think is you're most confident in 2020, 2024, just like going forward?
Defensive line, and without a doubt. I think with Gabriel Rubio coming back, that pretty much shores up any concerns I had, because I felt like if there was a concern, it was about the depth on the interior. But with him in the fold, Notre Dame's defensive line is going to be awesome this year, with Cross and Mills leading the way on the interior. That is so huge. That's one of the best tandems in all of college football. And I feel like for years we had this hope that eventually Riley Mills was going to break out and be this like force up the middle. And it took a while to get there, but I think during the second half of last season, he was absolutely a force. And then to have Howard Cross right there next to him is just such an advantage for Notre Dame over pretty much every opponent on their schedule. I mean, I watched that Duke game recently, actually, to watch Riley Leonard. Notre Dame Duke game, I mean. And that was when Howard Cross really broke out. And I was just watching it again, like in awe of just how dominant he was and how there's really nothing Duke could do to stop him in that game. So you've got Cross, you've got Mills. RJ Oben is a great addition in the transfer portal, coincidentally, from Duke. I don't know if he's going to be as productive as Javonte Jean-Baptiste, but that guy's relentless. He can get after the passer. And then you've got Jordan Botelho, who's been around forever. And it's so funny how different the conversation is surrounding Jordan Botelho this year as opposed to last year, because last year a lot of people thought he was going to break out. It didn't really happen, but that doesn't mean he still can't be a really good player for this team, especially in his fifth year. So you look at their frontline starters. Those are grown men, graduate seniors who have a ton of college football under their belt, really good college football under their belt. And then behind them, you've got exciting guys like Bubakar Traore. Josh Burnham could take his game to another level this year. So I feel like looking at the entire roster, I feel the most confident that the defensive line is going to be just consistently really good. They could even sustain an injury or two. Obviously you don't want that, but like even the guys, I haven't even mentioned Bryce Young, who might even be the most exciting freshman in this entire class. So I think there's plenty of reasons to be excited about that unit.
Are you sold? How high are you on Riley Mills?
I'm pretty high. I think a big reason why is because Howard Cross is right next to him.
Okay.
If Riley Mills was basically garnering all the attention from opposing offenses, I would feel differently. But
Yeah.
because Cross is right there and they can't double team him or do anything like that, it makes me think that Riley Mills is going to be that much better because he can play pretty freely. He's at his natural position again. And I understand why some fans have some concerns because they're probably tired of hearing about it. I mean, he's been on Bruce Feldman's freak list for the past 2 seasons. He's probably going to be on it a third. But I think when you have the benefit of all the other guys around him, he's going to be that much better.
Yeah, like I don't have concerns about him, and like because he's kind of known, right? In terms of his baseline play, right? He's kind of known quantity. I think people always say like Cross and Mills. Like I just don't think they're on the same level, right? And look, like Howard Cross is on a very high level, so there's no like big, no big shame in that. I just like I worry about him being like lumped in with like, yes, we know what Notre Dame is going to get from like high level of play. I'm just like, I'm not sure that he's been that guy. But you bring up like a really good point about like Botelho and Cross and Mills and Oben. Like these are all like older players, and so like you said, grown men. Like Notre Dame does have some like men, grown boys, like at on the defensive line. And that like bodes really well. Like that's like a really good point. I've never thought of it like that. It's a really good point you made. And like juxtaposed with like the youth that's behind them. So like Boubacar Traore and Burnham and Bryce Young, like you talked about. Like I think that Matt Freeman is like really high on Bryce Young in terms of like what he expects from him kind of going into the fall camp. So that's going to be like a really like intriguing group to track, not just the frontline guys, but also the guys behind, like Gabriel Rubio, like he's coming back, like Jason Onye, like he's coming back as well. So like there's a lot there for Notre Dame. And then you have like a Donovan Heinisch type, and like Cole Mullins is like kind of an interesting guy in terms of like his physical development and, coming off of, what I think people consider to be an impressive spring. Lauren Landau has apparently done some really good things with his body specifically. Speaking of Cole Mullins at this point, so there's a lot to track there. So that's a really good call by you there. Am I correct in assuming your biggest concern is going to be offensive line for Notre Dame?
It is, to the point where I feel bad saying it. And part of this is because we've been doing this like for 8 straight months. And immediately after last season ends, they're like, oh, what's going to be the biggest problem this season? I've been pretty much steadfast in saying it's going to be the offensive line. And I've tried to, I don't want to say talk myself into it because then it sounds like I'm lying to myself. I've really tried to look at, with a glass half full approach. Like what's the best case scenario with the offensive line? I think the best case scenario with them is that they still struggle a little bit early because every offensive line is going to struggle to some degree at the start of the season while they develop chemistry. But then they really figure it out by the Louisville game. And then the rest of the season, they're basically like the offensive line in 2018. A solid offensive line, an offensive line that eventually became elite once those guys got a little bit older. But when Notre Dame went to the playoff in 2018, you weren't like, oh, they just have this dominant offensive line. That was not the case at all. As long as they can get to that level, and if that's the biggest concern, that's a pretty good place to be if you're Notre Dame. So yeah, for me, it's the offensive line. Outside of that, we could, nitpick a little bit here and there, but for me, it starts and ends with them.
So I guess it was over the weekend, Matt Freeman reported, he put out a little, summer nuggets piece or a post on the message board. And one of the things included in there is Emil Wagner's been working with the first team offensive line at right tackle for pretty much all summer. Doesn't know that he's taken a second team rep. When you learn this, how did that make you feel? How did that make you feel inside?
I did have a question. It's like a first team rep in the summer. What does that even mean? But then it reminded me of a story of one of my good friends from high school. We played high school football together. He's into coaching now. He shadowed a former Notre Dame coach. I won't give all the details. Shadowed a former Notre Dame coach at a big time football program. And he said that he went to one of their practices in the summer. And he told me that it was not just like a summer workout. It was a full-blown practice, just no pads, and they used like a Nerf ball because you aren't legally allowed to use the football. So
Yeah.
it's like, oh, so that's how these coaches get away with it. I'm not saying that Notre Dame does it, but it was a reminder like, hey, they are continuing to get work throughout the summer. And as it pertains to Wagner, I thought that Emil Wagner would eventually beat out Tosh Baker. I figured that the staff might go with Tosh Baker to start the season just because he's older, has started a few games before in the past, but I thought eventually Emil Wagner would sort of beat him out because he has a higher ceiling. So if Wagner's going to beat him out now, and he ends up being the starting right tackle from week 1, I had to rethink about all my concerns. And the one that comes up over and over again is his weight,
Yeah.
his size. I get it. You obviously want your tackles to be a little bit bigger than 290 or whatever it is that he's listed at, even though he disputes it all the time. You know, it's easy for us on the outside to say, oh, he's too small. Well, like Tosh Baker's size could be to his detriment as well because he's 6'8", 320, but is he too big to move around? Can he move his feet laterally? So I had to rethink all my concerns about Wagner and just sort of like blindly looking at his weight and be like, that's not big enough. I still think he needs to get bigger and stronger so that he has a strong anchor and can be strong at the point of attack. But I was kind of like, maybe I should have seen this all along because I think we all looked at Wagner as like, yeah, higher ceiling, better player. It might have taken him a little bit to get to the right body weight to where he's even an option. But yeah, I think it makes sense. And I'm actually glad they're going with him now so that he gets all the first team reps throughout fall camp so that he's more ready to go when they play Texas A&M.
Yeah. Newt Rockney is in the chat. Thank you for joining us, Coach. Why not let Tosh Baker start at right tackle for A&M and make changes after the A&M game? I think Notre Dame thinks Emil Wagner is a better football player. Is what I think it is. This is just tea leaf reading on my part based on like a number of things. It's not like any one time. I think Notre Dame wanted and has thought that Emil Wagner was going to be the right tackle for a long time, months, even in spring. I thought that. And look, I think they gave Tosh an absolute chance to be the guy. He's going to be a swing guy. And who knows, like maybe they'll try, maybe he'll get a couple series in there. I have no idea. I just think Notre Dame thinks he's better, and so they're going to go with the better player. And to me, it's like, it's more important for Notre Dame. I know the opening game is a big deal. I get it. 100%. And if I thought that it was the difference between them winning and losing, then like Notre Dame went with Brandon Wimbush in 2018.
I was just about to say, do you remember that when apparently Ian Book was better than him in fall camp, and they're like, we need to go with Wimbush because they played Michigan the season opener. Yeah.
Yeah, like they did do that, right? And so there is some precedent towards it. I don't think it's that much of a difference. Like the quarterback is like you're designing a whole game plan, right? Like it's kind of different there. And I do think that I just think they like Emil Wagner better. And so they're going to go with him, and you need to get those guys. Like you want them to be as cohesive as they can be, and you got to put them out there against the best team. Because then you put them in a tough matchup, and it's like, well, later on, it's like, well, I wish we'd just seen him gotten that A&M game, and then you go up against Louisville, and then you go up against Florida State. Like if he hasn't gotten that A&M game under his belt, it can go the wrong way too. And I think that Rajon brings up a good point, or someone brought up a good point about Denbrock. It was Chief Brody. Look, you bring in Mike Denbrock because he can devise a plan. If you've got a weakness on the tackles, then you don't put your tackles in a terrible position, And so he says, I have faith that Denbrock can scheme around a battle line. I don't want to say battle line. It's just like, look, there are weaknesses that they're all going to have, and he needs to devise a game plan that's not going to expose them on a play-to-play basis, right? That's why you bring him in. That's why he's they're paying all this money for him. Is because you bring in a guy like that. What are your kind of thoughts on that before we can move on?
I do think that Mitchell Evans and his injury recovery is even more important now if Notre Dame does trot out Wagner, because you can obviously help out your tackles if you bring in more tight ends. Yeah. And if Mitchell Evans isn't ready to go, do you feel comfortable bring in Eli Raridon and Cooper Flanagan, two guys who individually I think are going to be really good football players for Notre Dame. But if you're bringing him in for run support, like how confident are you with those guys out there when you already have concerns about your tackles? We know Mitchell Evans is a good blocker. That's basically all he did for the first part of his career until last year when he got to finally shine as a wide receiver. But I think that his recovery is more important because he can help out those tackles, whichever side you line him up on the line of scrimmage. If he's out there, I feel better. If he's not, or maybe he's just, I don't know, 75%, anything close to that with his recovery, then do you spread out wide and just try to go short passes the whole game? I don't know. There's a lot of questions that need to be answered. Fortunately, like you said, Mike Denbrock has been around a long time. He's really good at his job. Notre Dame is paying him a lot of money to figure these things out. And if we've been concerned about the offensive line for however many months, the coaching staff, who gets to see them up close and personal every single day, has been thinking about it too. They've been game planning. So I fully expect them to have a plan in place to sort of work around any potential issues they have on the offensive line.
Personally, I think they're going to run at them. I think they're going to run at them a lot, right? Like Texas A&M has those defensive ends that want to get upfield and get after the quarterback, right? They've got very good defensive ends, probably the best Notre Dame's going to see, the whole year. I think Notre Dame's going to try to hit him in the face.
Can I ask you something?
Opinion. Yeah, go for it.
How many designed runs for Riley Leonard in the first game, over-under?
Over-under?
Yeah, just the Texas
design runs. I'll set the over-under at 6.5.
I think I take the over.
I would take the over too.
I think they're going to run him a lot in that game.
I think because I think quarterbacks get a lot more carries. Like I think the number of design runs that quarterbacks get are like a lot lower than people think. Like I think they could have, I think he'd have like 13 to 14 carries on the game, but like those won't, like a lot of those will be scrambles or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Right. Like, but I think he could get like 8 to 9 design runs. Like, I just think they are going to, because it's the best way to, because you can add a blocker in that sense. You know what I mean? Because you can add one of the backs as a blocker there. And like, hey, to NV Iris, it's 6.5. Same as me. I think Newt Rockney thinks the A&M game is going to be ugly. That's my take from what I'm seeing.
Most season openers are, man. I mean, last year was such an anomaly that Notre Dame just came out firing. And then when you have the benefit of hindsight too, and how much Notre Dame struggled on the road last season, I know it wasn't a road crowd, but they went to another continent to play a football game, and they were clicking on all cylinders. That rarely happens in the season opener. So yeah, I totally agree. It's probably going to be ugly.
It's you don't want that, right? Like you don't want it to be ugly. You want to click on all cylinders, right? Your football team and your media company, Tyler. And if you want your media company to be clicking on all cylinders and you don't want it to be ugly, then you go to VSR Media, founded by Notre Dame pregame host and Emmy award-winning anchor Vahid Sadrazadeh. VSR Media provides professional and cinematic video and photo. Whether you're looking for a collegiate or pro-level highlight reel, have a personal story to tell, or aiming to diversify and grow your business, VSR Media specializes in short and long-form video storytelling, social media management, and website design. VSR Media also captures professional headshots, senior and sports photos. Contact them at vsrmediacompany.com. Mention Irish Sports Daily to receive 20% off your first project. Visit them online or give them a call at 574-800-9106. All right, Tyler. Let's talk wide receivers. I want to talk about the wide receivers on the Notre Dame football team. I think the expectation is that Jaden Greathouse is going to be kind of the wide receiver one for Notre Dame, based on the fact that he was at Notre Dame last year. He had a very good freshman season. He's wearing number 1. I think people will give a lot of credence to that, me being one of them. But who do you think, like, who do you kind of, in your mind, is like, you know what, like, this guy is going to be like that almost 1A at times. Like the most confident you go into every game, it's like, this guy is going to have a big game for Notre Dame. Who do you think that's going to be at? Because I feel like there's a lot of options here.
I feel most confident in saying Jaden Thomas. Not that he's going to light the world on fire and put up like 150 receiving yard games, but I think he's going to give you 4 receptions for 60 yards every single game. And that is such a good number 2 option. And it's easy to forget what happened with him last season and how really like after the Ohio State game that basically wiped out the rest of his year. I remember seeing him limping around on the field during the Ohio State game and thinking, man, that is really, really bad. And then he just was never able to come back from that injury up until the bowl game. And who was Steve Angeli looking at from the very first snap? It was Jane Thomas. And again, he's not going to blow you away with the speed. He's very strong. He's physical. Greg McElroy thinks he's a tight end still because he looks like a tight end. And I think he could provide a safety net, sort of like a tight end will, to Riley Leonard this season. Again, I don't think he's going to be having any games where you're like, oh my God, that Jane Thomas just went for 150, had that 80-yard touchdown or anything like that. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think that he's going to be consistent and reliable and a really quality backup option, because I think that wide receiver 1, even though I really like Greathouse to lead the team in receptions this year, I think that with every game, there could be a new wide receiver who breaks out and has like 100 yards. Like it's going to be Greathouse. It could be Chris Mitchell. It could be Jordan Faison. I think that's going to be like a rotating cast, but like Jane Thomas is going to give you that consistent production that you really need for any passing game.
Okay. Question then. Okay. Who are Notre Dame's starting wide receivers? Give me boundary, slot, field.
I've really thought about this a lot, and I basically just find myself arguing with myself the whole time. So I think it's going to be Greathouse in the slot, Jane Thomas in the boundary, and then Chris Mitchell to the field. I don't fully understand. Maybe you'll have some better insight into this. I don't know if it's Jane Thomas's reluctance to play the boundary. I know he likes playing in the slot. I think for what Notre Dame needs, he's better suited to play the boundary. They did add Bo Collins. I am much higher on Chris Mitchell than I am with Bo Collins. I think Bo Collins is a good player, definitely going to be in the rotation. But like, yes, he has the size, but has he been productive enough where you're like, oh yeah, you can just write him in as the starting boundary receiver from day one? That part I'm not sure about. So I would go Thomas, Greathouse, Mitchell.
So it's interesting, right? Because I feel like if you tell me, like, I think about Jaden Thomas and I have only positive feelings about him, right? As a player. But it's like you said, like, I think he's best in the slot. I think he's best, in near the line of scrimmage. I think he's best in the middle of the field. And look, it's hard because we didn't see him have a ton of success at the boundary last year. But then we didn't see really anyone have a ton of success at the boundary last year. Basically, we didn't see anyone who wasn't playing in the slot have success, right? No one.
They put Greathouse in the boundary in one game. I was like, oh,
they put Greathouse. Well, the problem with that is like he was hurt too.
Yeah, exactly. He wasn't even all the way back.
Yeah, so it was like it wasn't like a good audition for him at all. That's difficult. And so, but like we know Bo Collins. Here's the thing about Bo Collins, right? Like, I was looking at this yesterday or couple of days ago. He had like 90 something catches in his career for 1,400 yards. And he has that at Clemson. Now, look, those aren't like amazing numbers. Like the most catches he had in a year was like 38, which is not great, right? Like if Jaden Thomas catches 4 for 60 in every game, he's going to have 48 catches, right? This is 10 more than, the career high in a season for Bo Collins. I get it.
Yeah. But
that's also at Clemson, right? And that was a Mickey Mouse offense for the majority of the time that he was there, especially throwing the ball. So it's just like I can't, it's hard for me to discount him, especially when like he does have the physical, like he has played it too. That's the other part. Like he has played it. And like Chris Mitchell, his numbers are insane. But
where are you at with Chris Mitchell?
I don't know. That's the thing. I think if there's anyone on like any wide receiver on this team, I don't know what to think about him. Like honestly, because it's only because of the FIU thing. His numbers are very good. I mean, we're talking like his catch rate, his drop rate is unbelievable. He dropped like contested catches. Like his stats and his numbers are terrific. But like didn't garner like a ton of buzz in the spring. Right? Like it's not like he had negative buzz. Like like Tobias, his buzz was famously not good, right? Like famously bad vibes. Just in terms of how people were talking about him. Like no one was talking about Mitchell like that. But it also wasn't like Mitchell's destroying practice. Now, granted, Notre Dame's got a good secondary, right? Like that's okay. Noted.
You could make the argument that Jaden Harrison had more buzz, and nobody was talking about him going into spring camp.
Exactly. Like, well, but here's one where it's like I kind of get what he is, right?
Yeah.
And Faison too. Like Chris Mitchell is the one where like he could have like 50 catches for 900 yards, or he could have 12 catches for 300 yards, you know, and like
Kane Madden of wide receivers.
Yeah, like I just wouldn't be surprised, right? Not surprised, but like, yeah, I'd be like, yeah, you know, he was at FIU, right? It's different.
Yeah. One deep ball, and you're like, oh,
yeah. And so I like he's one where it's like I'm very much going to be tracking kind of how people are discussing him throughout the fall. Because of that reason, right? Because like if he is like the former version of that, like the 50 catch guy, now we're talking like, okay, Notre Dame could really be in business here.
Yeah. One other thing about Bo Collins, I know Clemson fans were really frustrated by the amount of drops he had. He had a critical drop against Notre Dame, hit him right in the chest, went up to Xavier Watts, who nearly returned it for a pick six. I'm looking at PFF right now. They gave him 5 drops last season, Bo Collins, which is not great.
No, because not a ton. He had more drops
targets
than Chris Mitchell did.
Yeah, 62 targets, 38 receptions, 5 drops. Yeah, more drops than Chris Mitchell with far less targets. So that's not good. I'm just going to come out and say it. I am most excited about Jordan Faison, or maybe I'm most excited to see Jordan Faison in this camp because, again, still think Greathouse is going to be the best receiver on this roster. But, like, Faison was so good at the end of last year, came out of nowhere, and I just think he's a different kind of athlete. I don't know where he fits in the depth chart because he's going to be behind Greathouse, but he's one of those guys where when he gets the ball, especially in space, like I'm going to be on the edge of my seat. So I can't wait to see what he does now that all of his focus is on football again, because you could make the argument that Jordan Faison created the most buzz out of any wide receiver in last year's camp. And then they decided that they weren't going to play him until they literally had no other option. But you look at what he did in the second half of the year, and now with the, full season of college football under his belt, what he could do now.
Yeah.
I'm really excited to see what he can do this year.
I'm super high on him. I had him, I believe, in the top 10. Let me check. I'm going to go back and look. I don't specifically remember.
Well, you did that. I just want to say that
yes.
College Football 25 did Faison so dirty. He's like a 76 overall, but worse than that, they gave him a really low speed rating. It's like, wow, someone just took the day off here. They did not look at this at all.
Yeah, it's terrible. Like I just like I can't get in with the games. They don't know what they're doing. They gave Kyle Hamilton like an 89 rating. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I saw that on that.
Now, granted, it's like a different company, but still, it's terrible. I got Faison in the top 10. I think he's going to be awesome. I think he's going to be really good. Awesome in like, I don't know if he's going to make it to the NFL, but awesome in like the Shane Walton kind of way.
Yeah.
Where's just like great story. Yeah, like great college football player, and look at the Shane Walton situation, like would take. And so wide receiver is going to be super interesting. Who's going to play where, what kind of reps people are getting, who's getting buzz. And then you have the freshmen like that. We haven't even discussed Cam Williams. We haven't discussed Micah Gilbert. We haven't discussed Logan Saldate, right? Like they have so many guys. And this is like going back to like the Deuce Knight thing. Like, this is why I think it's kind of overblown. Like, the receiver class in 2025. It's like, yeah, but look at all these young guys. KK Smith. I didn't even bring up KK Smith. It's a great job by MV Irish. Like, KK Smith's a good football player. He is, and he can run, and he's got some juice. And so I just think their wide receiver situation is a lot better, especially going forward than I think people kind of give credit to. And so let's move on to let's talk linebackers, because this is another one where views are all over the board Like I'll ask you right now, like who do you think you're starting? Who do you think the starting linebackers are going to be? And you include Rover on this, right? So don't include the nickel piece. Let's say there's the Rover. Let's say a Rover starts against Texas A&M. Who are the three linebackers for Notre Dame?
Against Texas A&M, I think it's going to be Kaiser, Sneed, Drake Bowen. I think by middle portion of the season, could definitely see Kingston Villamu Asa beating out Drake Bowen, but I think that's a lot to ask of a true freshman. Now, the real thing that I'm curious to see is who are the two out there in nickel? Because I mean, I have no idea other than I know Kaiser is going to be one of those guys.
Well, so in nickel, right? Like you have sub packages where Sneed, he's just going to be a rusher, right? Like he may not even be a linebacker at this point. Rajon says, look out for Osbury. Like, I agree. Like, I think if they're in like pure passing, like I could see Osbury out there in place of Bowen. The thing with Kaiser is like, do you want him off the field in those passing situations? Like, probably not, right? Like the guy's a former safety. Like, you probably want him out there for that. I think he's going to be the guy like making all the calls. And so, like, who does KVA? Whose snaps is he taking? Like, is he taking Bowen's? Right? Probably. You know, will Sneed get any Will reps? Right? If he's in at Will, then who's out then? Like, is he going to come in for Kaiser? And if he's in for Kaiser, then who's calling the defense? Like, can Drake Bowen call the defense? Can KVA call the defense? Right? Now, the good part is all these guys are really good, like tremendous players, right? Well, like when you're talking about like how is Jaden Osbury going to get on the field, like you're in a good situation there, right? But just like how it all fits and where it fits in terms of, like I said before, the sub packages and everything, and just like who is out there with what position group, like who's repping where, like you say, like I think KVA is going to have like. And maybe you can remind me because I don't specifically remember, but like, was Manti like garnering starts in 2009?
His freshman year, he didn't start the season opener, but then
I know he didn't start season opener.
Then he came in. I want to say the Washington game of that year might have been his first start. But even Jalen Smith, like even though he did start the first game of his freshman year, that was not the plan. That was supposed to be Danny Spond at the outside linebacker spot. And then he suffered a career-ending injury.
And like then a neck injury or something?
Yeah. But again, it's rare, even with Manti, even with Jalen Smith, for a true freshman, no matter how highly touted they were, they normally are not going to be a day one starter.
Yeah. I'm thinking about this from Adam Dowling, KVA and Bowen together by the end of the season. And someone and Envy Irish brought up a good point that I think we should discuss here. So can't wait till Matt reports on who has the green dot at linebacker. Will tell us everything we need to know. So I would have said to this, like, how do you have KVA and Bowen together by the end of the season if who's calling the defense? But like the fact that they can call in the stuff now, and they can be like the coaches can directly talk to the players. Like that's kind of an interesting thing, right? Like I wonder if they would ever do a thing where they signal in the defense normally to like I don't know, the mic, like whoever it might be, and they call the defense that way, and then you give a green dot to someone like KVA, who's like, the coach is just going to talk to him directly. It's like, this is the defense. This is what you do specifically. That would be interesting. It's like a little bit of a wrinkle there. Like I get it, right? Like I think KV. The thing is that I don't know that. I think they're both going to be playing Mike, and I think that it has to be till next year to where like one of them will be at will and they can play next to each other. Like I don't know that either of them is going to cross train enough to be able to play next to each other, but that will be interesting to track kind of as the year goes on. Chris P brings up a good point. Golden has so much flexibility in sub packages. Third down Aztec blitz packages is going to be lit 100%. It's going to like they are in the third year of this defense. And like you have Watts back there, you have Ben Morrison back there, you have Rod Hurd, who hasn't been in the defense, but like he's played the most snaps of anyone on the defense. According to Pete Sampson, he's played almost like 1,500 snaps defensively for Northwestern. No, but he's played a ton of football. Like they have so much experience on the back end. And then like the fact that they're in the third year of the defense, he's going to have so many little wrinkles that he brings out. It's going to be very, very fun to watch. What is your feeling on Rod Hurd? Speaking of him,
I mean, that's a lot of football, man. What, over 2,000 snaps? And even though I understand there's some concerns about his playmaking ability, I feel like Xavier Watts is going to make up for a lot of that. You could put Rod Hurd in the box. And I think that when they added Rod Hurd, and I remember looking up his stats initially where he played and all that, I was like, oh, he's a nickel. But Notre Dame has no intention to play him a nickel because they got Jordan Clark. So why would they add him as a safety and have him make this position change so late in his career? It makes me think that the role for Rod Hurd is going to be a little bit different than DJ Brown. I'm not sure what that's going to be. I'm just sort of speculating right here, but I don't want to say like super high expectations. I don't think he's going to come in and like light the world on fire, but I think he's going to be better than DJ Brown, and he's going to be more reliable. He's going to be better at stopping the run. He's going to be able to make some plays in coverage. And even though I understand that you and other people are high on Adon Schuler, I think he's eventually going to be good. I still just have a little bit of concern with him playing as a redshirt freshman. I think Hurd gives you, you're just much more comfortable with him back there. Sure, there's going to be some plays or two. You're like, man, like if he was a little bit faster, maybe he would have made that play. But I feel, no concern, I guess I should say, about putting him in there at safety. And I feel like, as you know, as a former safety, like that's a big part of it. Just the coaching staff trusts you. Yes. Okay, good.
I think the fact that if he's playing next to Watts and or Hurd back there, you're in a good spot. Like you're in a real good spot because that's exactly what you want. Yeah, Schuler. Yeah. Gotcha. Because like it's exactly what you want because then you have two guys where it's like, hey, we can help him out and make sure he's where he's supposed to be. Because like he had a couple of occasions last year where it's like looks great, completely out of position. Right. And so like that's not going to work, especially in the back. Yeah. And like that was one thing Notre Dame didn't have a ton of last year is busts in the back. They did have that a couple of times. And when they happened, they went for big plays for the opponent. Right. So
Brown's bust usually came when he tried to tackle someone like that Louisville game.
Not great. Like that wasn't great against Ohio State. He turned someone loose. Just completely turned someone loose, like completely just out of sync with the rest.
He had another play in that Ohio State game that was in pass coverage.
He did. And what's funny is like I've watched that all 22 of that game a number of times.
Wow, are you torturing yourself in the offseason?
You got
nobody needs football season sooner than you. That's what you're doing.
You gotta watch these things.
I know, but multiple times, man.
Well,
I don't want to be anywhere near you.
There's certain things that I'm looking for. I'm tracking like how Ben Morrison guarded Marvin Harrison Jr. Things of that nature. That play call that Al Golden put in there, it was almost like he knew the play.
Yep.
How perfect that play call was.
That was on my side of the stadium, and I was telling my dad over and over on that drive, McCord's going to make a mistake. He's going to make a mistake. He's going to make a mistake, and he did.
He threw it right to us, and it didn't. We didn't want it. We didn't accept
one of the ultimate what ifs, not just with Notre Dame football, college football. If DJ Brown comes down with that, just think about how different the Ohio State football program is today, and they're like the clear front runners. But anyway, sorry, I sidetracked.
According to Jamie, who was there, he was at that game, covering it. The fans might have torn down the stadium. So he's like the place was rocking. Like he said it was insane. So maybe the stadium would have been torn to pieces. So that maybe it's a good thing. All right, so we've hit on the safeties, hit on the D-line, linebackers. I think we love the corners. That's going to get sorted. I think Jordan Clark is a fun kind of addition, see what he's going to bring. I mean, I think the defense, like people are so excited about the defense, and overall, like I just think it's the passing game. Like Chief Brody brings up, I just want to see a coherent passing offense one time, please. And you know what's funny is like people look back on that 05 season so fondly. They went 9-3. They literally beat no one of consequence. Like the Michigan team, they beat them like 17-10, and that was a 7-5 team. That was not a good Michigan team, right? They beat no one of consequence, but they threw the heck out of the ball, and it was downfield, and it was just fabulous. Like every time Brady Quinn dropped back, it was like, man, they're about to hit a big one, and they usually did. And so like that's what it's just like that's gonna be the thing, you know. And like if I'm listening for anything, is Notre Dame hitting big plays in practice? Are they getting vertical? Whether it be in the running game, whether it be in the passing game. Like, can you hit big plays? Like, it is the most important thing in all of football, in my opinion, is just being explosive on offense and defense. And that's kind of what I'm looking for there, Tyler.
That's where Chris Mitchell really comes into play. We don't need him to get like 10 catches a game for this to be a functioning offense. He could have 2 catches a game, but if they go for 60 yards, you know, that's plenty. You just need someone to take the top off the defense. I think Jordan Faison can, just because he's so fast, but he's also like 5'11". So if you want a really good vertical threat, you're going to need someone like Chris Mitchell, or maybe Bo Collins steps up in a way that we haven't seen and aren't expecting right now. But man, I'm looking at those 2005 stats. Samardzija, 1,250 receiving yards, 15 touchdowns. Maurice Stovall, 1,149 receiving yards, 11 touchdowns. And McKnight was hurt that whole season. Like, it's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. It was really fun. Hey, quick trivia. Faster 40 time. Darius Walker or Dexter Williams?
Well, since you're asking me, it makes you think Darius Walker, but I don't know. Dex could fly, man.
Yeah, it's Darius Walker. Faster 40 time. Darius Walker or Peter Warrick?
Peter Warrick. Man.
Darius Walker.
What's Darius Walker up to these days? I'd like to see.
You know what? He was out here. He's in now granted this was like more than a decade ago, but I saw him it's funny. I saw him at like a Christmas Eve mass in, I want to say, Redondo Beach.
Wow.
This was at least 15 years ago. Maybe 10 years ago. So this is where he was. I know he did some stuff for Fox. I know he did some things for Fox.
One fun Darius Walker story as we get close to wrapping things up here. So when Darius Walker was playing, I was 8 or 9. I went to a game with my parents, and it was one of like the first Notre Dame games I ever went to. And this was at a time when I was all into like College Game Day and making signs to games. So I was that annoying ass kid who'd bring a sign to a game. And I had one that was like the 4 Horsemen, and I had Samardzija, Quinn, Walker, and Stovall. I think it was 05, maybe it was 06. Either way, Walker was on it. And we're walking into the crowd, and we sit down at our seat, and Darius Walker's parents are always on TV. They always showed him on NBC. They were right in front of us. So I like tapped, and I was like, that's Darius Walker's parents. And my parents are like, how do you know that? And I tapped him on the shoulder, and I showed him the sign. So I have a picture, my 9-year-old self with Darius Walker's parents. I don't know where it is, but it exists somewhere.
If I sat next to Darius, I can't picture his mom, but if I sat next to Darius Walker's dad tomorrow, I would know exactly.
You know exactly who he is. Exactly.
Yeah. So, all right, that's probably a good place to end it. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Tyler, had a great time, buddy. Hey, we're gonna have to do this again. In all seriousness, this might be a regular thing. This might be a regular thing throughout the year. We're gonna have Tyler on to talk about the football team because I had a good time. We hope you did too. If you like what you heard today, please hit the like button. Please hit subscribe. Please hit the notification bell so you know wherever it is we are going live. Links to the podcast are only going to be in the description below. Jamie and I will be back tomorrow. He's going to be at practice tomorrow, so he'll give us the scoop on everything that he saw fill us in on the who looks good, who didn't look good, who's lining up where, and then we'll talk about Marcus Freeman's press conference as well. Big day tomorrow. Football gets started back up. Can't wait to talk about it with you. We'll talk to you soon. Keep hitting and hustling.
That was great.